The idea of spinning a shell in a smoothbore barrel is related to the Hale rocket, not the Congreve rocket, as I said in the previous video. It's used nozzles at the back of the shell to rotate it up to speed rather than using rifling. The numbers I am using are based upon this paper produced by the Belgian military. They are for the 155mm ER shell. The weight is about 41 kilograms, which converts to about 91 pounds. The moment of inertia is 0.1376 kilogram meter squared, which converts into US units to about 0.1 slug feet squared. The ER has to do with the performance of the shell under supersonic flows. Any object that is traveling at supersonic speeds that has a blunt back will have what is known as an expansion fan. An expansion fan represents a range of shock waves being formed, and that creates an energy dissipation. In 1908 in Germany, a bullet called the Spitzer round was developed. This was based upon the work of Ernst Mach studying shock waves in supersonic flow. The Spitzer round has a pointed tip and what's called a boat tail at the back, a tapering of the bullet. That tapering of the bullet reduces the expansion fan, and the pointed tip is better at traveling at supersonic speeds. Before the Spitzer round, bullets were just a cylinder with a rounded front end. During World War I, artillery shells looked like a beer can with a dunce cap on top. By World War II, all artillery shells had the Spitzer design. It is possible to further suppress the expansion fan by having a propellant charge produce enough gas to generate a gas curtain at the back of the shell. This effectively extends the length of the shell and suppresses the expansion fan. This is what is referred to as the 155 ER shell. At all points past the muzzle, the shell will have a higher velocity. This means that the shell will rise to a higher altitude. The higher altitude means a higher rise time and a higher fall time, so the total flight time of the shell will increase. Additionally, the horizontal velocity is higher. Those two factors of the longer flight time and the higher horizontal velocity will mean an increase in range. This is the rotational rate of the shell over 1700 radians per second, which comes out to well over 16,000 RPM. This is where I really got it wrong in a previous video. I underestimated the rate of rotation to 1/10, which means you would need 100 times the amount of energy. The kinetic energy for a rotating object is 1/2 I, they're using P squared. P is 1700, squared is 3 million, I is 0.1, that gives you 300,000. The 1/2 gives you a number of 150,000, and the units are pound-feet of energy. High explosives have an energy value between 1.5 and 1.7 million pound-feet per pound of explosive. Propellant charges are similar. High explosives are designed to release their energy in a very short amount of time. Propellant charges are designed to release their energy over a longer amount of time. For 150,000 pound-feet, that is about 1/10 of a pound. Propellant charges used in the barrels of artillery pieces are about 30% efficient. About 30% of the energy they produce actually goes into the kinetic energy of the shell. 1/10 of a pound is about 1/1000th of a cubic foot. That would be about 1.7 cubic inches. At 30% efficiency, you would need almost 6 cubic inches of propellant. If the nozzles being used are 1 inch in diameter, that's about 0.8 square inches. If you have 6 nozzles, that's about 5 square inches. Therefore, you would need about 1.2 linear inches of propellant per nozzle. A 50 caliber barrel means that the barrel is 50 times the diameter of the shell, the bore of the barrel. That is measured from the breech block. In front of the breech block are the propellant charges, and they're typically about 4 diameters. In addition, when the boat tail reaches the muzzle, gases escape around the boat tail, further reducing the effective length of the barrel. So the effective barrel length is actually about 45 calibers. A 155 shell is about 6 inches in diameter, so the effective length of the barrel is about 22.5 feet. The way combustion charges are designed for rifles and artillery pieces is that the combustion charge burns for the first half of the barrel length. The second half of the barrel length is used for energy recovery because the hot gases still have a lot of available energy. If propellant charges burn for the full length of the barrel, you would need twice as much propellant charges. With the propellant charges burning for half the length of the barrel, with a fairly simple model, at the muzzle, it has 80% of the energy of the propellant charges burning for the full length of the barrel. That reduces the amount of propellant you need by half. It also reduces the recoil. When the shell leaves the muzzle, all of the gases in the barrel accelerate, and the cannon barrel becomes a very badly designed rocket motor that produces a lot of additional recoil. For 2,800 feet per second muzzle velocity, if you square that, you get about 8 million. If that's 80% of the energy, you would get 10 million for a charge that burned the full length of the barrel. 22.5 feet, you multiply by 2, you get 45. You divide that into 10 million, you get about 220,000. Acceleration of gravity is about 32.2. Divide that into 220,000, you get about 7,000 Gs. 91-pound artillery shell is about 640,000 pounds of force. The area for a 6-inch diameter tube is about 28 square inches. That comes out to about 23,000 pounds per square inch of pressure on average during the time when the propellants are burning. If the muzzle velocity is 2,800 feet per second, the average velocity is about 1,400 feet per second. For 22.5 feet, that comes out to about 1/60th of a second. If the rate of rotation is over 1,700 radians per second, the average is over 850 radians per second. 1/60th of that is 14 radians. If you wanted to finish the combustion before the end of the barrel, that might give you 10 radians. If you put the nozzles 1.5 inches from the center of the shell, because you need other space for things like the gas generators, that would give you a total path length of 15 inches or 1 1/4 feet. If you need to produce 150,000 pound-feet of energy, that means you would need 120,000 pounds of force. 6 nozzles at 0.8 square inch each is 5 square inches. That's 24,000 pounds per square inch, which is comparable to the pressure of the propellant charges in the barrel. So it looks like it's doable. One of the things this paper was evaluating is what happens if a shell is misaligned in the barrel. And if it's misaligned by 0.1 degree, you get a dispersion that follows this pattern. The 8 points indicate the 0.1 degree misalignment at 8 different points around the barrel at 45 degrees. If you want to have good accuracy and range, the shell has to be centered very tight in the barrel. This is the aim point, and this is the center of the dispersion, assuming 0.1 degree misalignment. The propellant charges, if they don't perform completely evenly, may cause the shell to wobble a bit. The shell is made of steel, the barrel is made of steel. If you scrape steel on steel, you erode the barrel. What they have are driving bands that are made out of a softer material, usually a copper bronze, that separate the shell from the barrel and prevent the shell from scraping on the barrel. In a rifled barrel, their purpose is to prevent the shell from scraping on the barrel, but also to seal the gases and provide a surface for the rifling to rotate the shell. In a smoothbore barrel, they're still needed to seal against the gases and prevent erosion of the barrel. In the smoothbore barrel, those driving bands can be made with a thinner profile that will enable it to stabilize the shell better. There is limitations because the shell and the barrel may be at different temperatures. As you fire the gun, the barrel warms up. And you can have shells operating anywhere from -10 degrees or -20 degrees up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the temperature expansion has to be allowed for in the size and the spacing of the rings. You probably want the rotational charges to stop burning before the muzzle to give those bands a chance to stabilize the shell if there was any non-uniformity in the burning of the propellant charges. This number they have listed as nu naught, nu sub-zero. That is the launch angle of the shell. This number is gamma. This is the angle of the shell when it approaches the ground. They could have called both numbers gamma. I think they call the first number nu naught because they are referencing a fixed artillery barrel. What you will notice is it's 65 degrees at launch and about 75 degrees at descent into the ground. That's typical of an artillery shell. As it's traveling forward, it's losing horizontal velocity, and its angle of descent is steeper than its angle of ascension. At the back of the shell, there must be enough steel to support the 640,000 pounds of thrust on the shell. As you move up the shell, there's less weight being accelerated, and the material can be thinner. The steel used in shells is pretty good quality steel, and the shells are only used once, so you don't have to worry about metal fatigue, which means you could probably have as little as 5 square inches of steel to support the acceleration of the shell. The main goal of this paper was to compare 2 different computer programs simulating the flight of artillery shells. One used 100 more steps than the other program, where their conclusion was as long as the initial conditions were similar, the results were close enough that the simpler program could be used. This is the time of flight in seconds. This number is the range in meters. This number is the Coriolis effect, which is the relative movement of the shell sideways owing to the rotation of the Earth. This is the final velocity of the shell. The speed of sound at sea level is 330 meters per second. So the shell is traveling only a little bit above the speed of sound at the end of its path. This number is the final rate of rotation, and both the speed and rotation are greatly reduced because of the effects of aerodynamic drag.